God! My God! Help me!
H.P. Lovecraft's writings are popular around the world, and I too consider myself a Lovecraft enjoyer. I have read many of his stories multiple times, and I even own a nice copy of an anthology of his works aptly called the Necronomicon, the best weird tales of H.P. Lovecraft, which is one of my most beloved books in my collection. I am also an enjoyer of the famous Chaosium published Call of Cthulhu role-playing game. In fact, it's my favorite pen and paper RPG of all time, and me and my friends have played many adventures together and have always had a blast. Lately, a lot of things happened, so I did not have much time to run a Call of Cthulhu game in quite a while, though I hope that I soon might get the chance to do so again. But do you know what I did play in the meantime? That's right, I played Call of Cthulhu Shadow of the Comet, an adventure game developed and published by the French company Infogrames, back in the antediluvian times of 1993, when adventure games were still relevant in the gaming world. Of course, back then the adventure game market was dominated by Sierra Online and LucasArts. Despite this, there were many other developers during that era that put out quality adventure titles that could easily rival those of the big two. Call of Cthulhu Shadow of the Comet is definitely not one of them. As an aside note, Infogrames also released Alone in the Dark 1 year prior. However, one thing that can be said about the game is that it is certainly faithful to the source material, partly also because it's an officially licensed Call of Cthulhu title. The game is a clumsy but earnest homage to Lovecraft's works. The story and setting are as Lovecraftian as they come. The action takes place sometime in the beginning of the 20th century in the small New England town of Ilsmouth, which just so happens to be the site of some strange happenings. In 1834, a British chap known as Lord Boleskine, wanting to witness the passing of Halley's Comet, visited Ilsmouth after hearing that its surrounding areas make it the best place on Earth to observe astronomical phenomena. However, something strange happened to Lord Boleskine during his trip, and the man came back to England a raving lunatic, thus having to spend the rest of his life in an asylum. The year is now 1910, and you play the role of John Parker, a young British journalist who has heard of the Boleskine case and now wants to travel to New England to investigate it further. And it just happens to be right in time for the next passage of Halley's Comet. As I said before, typical Lovecraftian plot. The story takes place over a period of 3 days, during which Parker will get to know the town of Ilsmouth and its surroundings, as well as its many inhabitants. If there is one thing that Shadow of the Comet does well, is to create a sense of space. You will be able to freely walk around town and its environs, and you will be able to interact with many of the characters that populate it. Some of them will be your allies and some your enemies, though you won't know for sure whom to trust right at the beginning, so the game manages to convey a cool sense of dread and foreboding. The fact that you spend so much time in one place also means that you will be well acquainted with the NPCs, and so, as the plot progresses, they'll start to grow on you more and more. One cool feature is that the important NPCs have animated portraits which still hold up today in my opinion, and this further helps to flesh them out. The same cannot be said about the voice acting. While the game is fully voiced, the quality is very poor to the point of being downright hilarious when they should be the exact opposite. The heart of every adventure game lies in its puzzles, and the ones present here are okay for the most part. Most of them are logical, but many aren't. There were quite a few parts where I had to use a walkthrough. For example, there is this one underground labyrinth that you have to traverse, and it can be really obscure and can involve a lot of trial and error before you manage to solve it. Then there is the infamous mixed chemicals to develop photos puzzle, which is one of the worst that I have ever encountered. Basically, your job is to develop some photos and you have a lot of chemicals at your disposal, but you are never given a hint in game as to which ones and in what order to use. Not even the manual provides any hints. So basically, the only way that you could have solved it back in the day was if you were a photographer or a chemist yourself and assuming that the devs got the formula right in the first place, or to get a hold of a guide somewhere, usually from a gaming mag or an official walkthrough. The control scheme is something that bears mentioning. Although the game does come with mouse support, no rational human being would use the mouse to play this game. Instead, the optimal way is to use the cursor keys to move around and the letter keys to interact with the world. It's a bit clunky, but I got used to it in the end. One nice feature is that a dotted line will appear between you and an important object when you are close to it. This eliminates pixel hunting, but it also means that selecting the right item you wish to interact with when you are close to them is far more difficult than it should be. As I said before, the story takes place during the span of 3 days. I won't go into detail since the story is arguably the best aspect of the game, so I don't want to spoil it. Suffice to say that devs showed restraint when using the source material. By that I mean that they could have easily went overboard and turned this into a mythos zoo, throwing around ghouls, nightcons and shoggoths all over the place, but thankfully the supernatural element is used appropriately. Death is present, as it should be in any good adventure game and especially a horror one. However, there are no dead ends, so you can just reload the previous game. Hope you saved often. Oh, and make sure to save before talking to someone too, because sometimes choosing the wrong dialogue option will prove to be fatal. One last cool element that I have to mention is the museum, which is accessed through a menu when starting the game. This works like a gallery feature where you get to walk through a museum and look at various pieces of artwork connected to the Cthulhu mythos. This just goes to show you just how much love the developers had for the source material.
This is the most remarkable of all the works by Boston painter Richard Upton Pickman, entitled The Ghoul. Its most striking feature by far is the unbelievable realism of its technique. Such is the greatness of Pickman's art, one would swear it had been painted from life.
Overall, Shadow of the Comet is definitely not the best adventure game out there, however it is without a shadow of a doubt one of the better Cthulhu ones. Since this intellectual property is public domain, there is a lot of Lovecraftian entertainment out there, however a lot of it doesn't even come close to capturing the essence of the source material. In fact, a lot of it is silly, quirky and sometimes downright kawaii, which does not do justice to the source material in any way, shape or form. There are very few Cthulhu works out there that are respectful to the source, and Shadow of the Comet is one of them. It has its faults, such as the dated voice acting, the awkward control scheme, as well as some obtuse puzzle design, but overall I enjoyed my time a lot with this game. I think one's enjoyment will depend heavily upon his appreciation of the source material. If you are a Lovecraft fan, then you are probably going to have a lot of fun with Shadow of the Comet. If you don't like the Cthulhu mythos or are not familiar with it, then it is probably best that you skip this game. And that's the end of this review. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, may all your sanity checks succeed.
Poor Parker, so young and already in the next world.